It's a wonderful day, isn't it?
It's a very blustery day out.
Blustery?
Mm-hmm.
I never knew what
Luckily,
blustery
my hair is already a
means.
mess, so it didn't really affect it.
Perfect. My hair is absolutely a mess as well.
Yes, it is.
It's a mess.
I found the devil.
The devil?
I found him.
Really? Is this him?
No.
In this wheelchair?
No. He's over here in this bucket. I kid you not. There he is. Mr. Sin!
Oh my
Not
goodness.
bothering us anymore.
And I remember her saying, okay, you're going to play Mr. Sin today. And she hands me this purple puppet with the nasty mustache. Pop the little puppet up, and literally on cue, 80 kids out there all, boo, no, yuck, I hate that guy. I was like, man, these guys are trained on cue. Like, I don't know if they got candy for doing that or what. But
Oh, man, they just want to come down on
deep
someone.
theological teaching. Deep theological teaching.
Well.
Hey everyone, welcome to Together We Build. My name is Chris Behnke. I'll be hosting this with Prudence O'Hare. Prudence, it's a wonderful day, isn't it?
It's a very blustery day out.
Blustery?
Mm-hmm.
I never knew what
Luckily, my
blustery
hair is already a
means.
mess, so it didn't really affect it.
Perfect. My hair is absolutely a mess as well.
Yes, it is.
It's a mess. It's a total mess. We also have with us Sheila Gregoire. I'm so glad to talk to you. She's an author of an amazing book called The Great Sex Rescue, which we've read, and we actually give this out during the marriage workshop that we teach. Did you know that? It was your idea, actually.
Oh, well, yes, I like to give presents.
So Sheila, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. How are you doing? And I forget, where are you actually located in the world?
I am in Southern Ontario. It's kind of blustery here too. I feel like I'm in Winnie the Pooh right now talking about blustery days, but yes.
That's right. The old blustery days. But he had the rain cloud that literally followed him around. So that's like, hopefully that's not. Hopefully that's
It's always the hope.
So Sheila, the author of a whole bunch of amazing books. We're super excited about it. We have not, you think you might have read one or two others, but I've only read The Great Sex Rescue. I'm super excited to talk about it because I feel like it is the book that I wish somehow, Sheila, you wrote like 50 years ago, because it would have helped so many people. But I absolutely loved it because it kind of addressed some things that never sat quite right with me from all of the other books on marriage that we've read. And we've attended all kinds of different workshops and
this is how it went down, right? I saw the book recommended by someone else. I think it was actually on a Fit to Be
on Facebook
chat. They were talking about, somebody popped a question that was about sexuality, and of course everybody hops on and says stuff, but actually the book was recommended. So I took a picture of it because it wasn't just one person, it was a couple. And so I was like, well, this must be something to look into. And so I sent it to him because he always orders my paper copies because I like paper. And he's an audio guy. So he says, okay, I'll order it. And then before I even get my paper copy, he's already listened to the book like what was it, 1.5 times through?
I mean, that's the problem with paper. That's the problem.
Like, you have to read this book.
Paper's so old school.
I'm going to. Anyway.
Yeah, it was super powerful. And we had, we've been married 25 years now. This is our 26th year, which is exciting, but we've read all kinds of the books, lots of books that Sheila, you talk about in this. We've read, I think most of the ones that you talk about.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a bit of a shock. So I'd love it, Sheila, if you just kind of give a high level, because I think a lot of people are not familiar with it. They probably are familiar with Love and Respect and Sheet Music and all these different books that are out there. Can you give us an overview of, also, why did you write it? So why you wrote it, what is it? And let's just, oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I almost forgot the trivia.
I was going to remind you.
You got so excited about the book.
I got so excited about the book. Okay. Don't go anywhere. We're gonna do the book in a second, but we got to do this trivia. Now, how it works, Sheila, is that I read these weird trivia questions, and Prudence always gets them right.
No, that isn't true.
She gets them right. And then we have these buttons right here, depending on how things get answered. I've got these different buttons. So, okay, we're going to see how you compete up against Prudence. Now, Prudence, not look at the screen right now because the answers are up there.
Okay.
So you have to cover your eyes like this. Okay. Okay, let's see here.
I can see everything on the big screen, Chris.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Don't look at the big screen.
There.
Don't look at. Okay, what? Okay, here's the first one. Here we go. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
What famous country singer once lost her own lookalike contest?
Oh gosh, I know Adele did, but is she really country?
Adele did.
Oh, that's right.
Are you sure it isn't Adele?
I'm sure it's not Adele.
Okay.
She's not country. She's pop. She's pop.
How about Taylor Swift?
No, incorrect.
I'm going to go with Dolly.
Dolly is correct.
What? That was like
Prudence,
my second guess.
This is the first time you've got one wrong. Sheila is destroying you right now. Okay. All right. Dolly Parton. That's actually weird. How could you lose your own lookalike? Let's see.
Well, she does wear a lot of wigs, so.
Okay, so Harvard's a prestigious university, correct? Like prestigious, and they have a very low acceptance rate.
Yeah.
What is an organization, not a university, a big company that has a lower acceptance rate than Harvard? You can look at the screen now, Prudence. I've removed it.
Like not a university?
Not a university. It's a company. Like, I don't know, McDonald's. Not McDonald's, but it's just a company. It's not a fast food chain. It's a surprising.
Apple?
Starbucks.
Apple. Two wonderful guesses. The correct answer is surprisingly Walmart.
What?
A lower acceptance rate. So it's easier. So this is just it's not really accurate, but it would be easier to get into Harvard than Walmart, according to this.
How is that? I don't know if I believe that.
Well, I mean,
I think when they open new stores, they just do like these major hiring things. So like the 10,000 people show up. I think that's probably what happened.
That's what it is. You have to trust this crazy weird trivia on boardpanda.com, right? Like that's a reputable. Okay. Let's do at least one more. I think I already asked that one. Skipping it. I know I asked that one. What I might have done this one. What bird breed can tell the difference between a Monet and a Picasso painting?
You did ask this one.
Well, do you remember the answer?
No.
Okay, what bird?
I mean, eagles have really good eyesight, but
eagles have good. You can look at the screen. You can look at the screen.
A hummingbird.
If I get this right, then I will have already done it.
So, Sheila, are you guessing eagle or hummingbird?
I'm thinking hummingbird because they have to know colors for like getting the nectar and stuff.
Oh, that's a super good point. What's your guess, Prudence?
Pigeon.
Pigeon is correct, but you already knew that. Hummingbird sounds a lot more reasonable, by the way.
100% sure, but
okay, we'll do one. We'll do one more.
That a pigeon.
Okay, let's see here. One more. Did we do what animals constitutionally protected in Florida?
Probably.
Well, what is it? What animal is constitutionally protected in the state of Florida? Sheila, what's your guess?
Like, is it an alligator or something?
You would think, right? You would think it's an alligator. It's not alligator. Okay, you can look at the screen now.
Oh, I knew
you've got this. It's right there.
Such important information that I forgot it. Oh man.
Come on. This is good. You're making it.
Was it a lizard of
It's
some
not
sort?
a lizard of
Okay,
some.
I don't
It's
know.
a pig. It's a
pig?
pig. Alligator
the
makes
wild
sense.
boars. Oh yeah, the wild boars. Yeah.
Is that their national animal? A pig?
I didn't have that prepared. I'm not ready for that question. Okay, so yes, you guys both score 100%. Nice job.
Well, I don't.
Nice job, Sheila. First time on Together We Build, and you score 100% on trivia. Excellent job.
He needs to stop lying. People won't believe you.
All right. Absolutely none of that trivia has anything to do with this topic at all. Not even a little bit. So this topic that I want to get into, it is the topic of sex and intimacy. And already I can hear, if you listen real carefully, you can hear Christians like shutting off. That's a sensitive topic. I need to run and hide from that. So don't do that. Like, you need to hear this. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I didn't know it was going to be about that. You need to listen to this. It's a super powerful message. Okay, now the book, The Great Sex Rescue, that's how we came to know you, Sheila. Let's go back to the question that I asked before the trivia, which is why? Why did you write this book? How did you write it? Tell us a little bit about the journey.
All right. So I have been blogging since 2008. I was a mommy blogger, marriage, housework, parenting, writing about all that stuff. And then I found the more I talked about sex, the more my traffic grew. And so my blog got bigger and bigger. I kind of became like the Christian sex space. And I wrote my first edition of the Good Girl's Guide to Great Sex. I wrote 31 Days to Great Sex. I was putting out posts on how to have great sex. The only thing I wasn't doing was reading other marriage and sex books because I was always afraid of plagiarizing. And I figured, well, they're a Christian, I'm a Christian, we're all saying the same thing. We all love Jesus.
Yes.
But over the years, I kept getting comments and emails from readers who were still having the same issues. Like, it didn't matter how much good information I put out there, they still had these big problems. Right. And I was trying to figure out what to say about it. And then one day I had a migraine. It was January 2019. I didn't want to work. I was procrastinating, so I'm on Twitter. And I'm in the middle of this discussion that people are having about whether they need love or respect. And there are a bunch of women arguing that they needed respect. And they were referring to Emerson Eggerich's book, Love and Respect, which says that women need love and men need respect. And I thought to myself, I have that book upstairs. This would be an awesome way to procrastinate. So I went and got it. And I opened to the sex chapter, being the sex person that I am. It's not a long chapter, like maybe 12 pages. It didn't take long. But I like to say it's as if a nuclear bomb went off in my living room because I couldn't believe what I was reading. Yeah. It said things like, if your husband is typical, he has a need that you don't have.
Right. Yep.
And that need is for physical release. Women don't need physical release. They need emotional release, but men need physical release. And nothing about intimacy. There wasn't a single word about how women can feel pleasure too. Instead, it was just, he needs physical release. If he doesn't get it, he'll have an affair and he'll come under satanic attack without physical release. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking, holy cow, is this what all our Christian books are saying? So at the time, I had two young women working for me. One was my oldest daughter, who's a psychometrics grad, psychology grad, and one was a young woman who had just had a baby, and she's an epidemiologist and statistician, and I've got them both on FaceTime, and we're just freaking out. And so I wrote a post, a whole series of posts the next week about this book, and I had so many people email me telling me that that book enabled abuse in their marriage. Yeah. And so we thought, oh no, what if people don't realize this? And Focus on the Family publishes this. So we created a report. My statistician person did this huge complex report on all the emails we got. We sent it to Focus on the Family thinking that they would listen to us, and they ignored us.
Yep.
Didn't even answer. And so we thought, okay, well, they can ignore a couple hundred women, but can they ignore 20,000?
Right. Come on.
So we decided to do the biggest research project that has ever been done. We asked 20,000 women, completed our survey. They answered a minimum of 130 questions. Some had more, depending on how many times they'd been married. And we asked about their marital satisfaction, their sexual satisfaction, and then we presented them with a bunch of common things that are taught in predominantly evangelical Christian circles.
Right.
And from that, we could see the difference between people who did believe stuff and people who didn't believe stuff, and how that affected their marriage and their sex lives.
Wow.
And that became, the Great Sex Rescue.
Yeah. What I absolutely love about it is that you took real research from actual women, and then you didn't say, "Oh no, this is like human psychology, and so we can't consider the Bible." You said, "Okay, let's look through the biblical lens at what these actual women, who are real women with real marriages and real husbands and real relationships, and let's actually look at what the data says through a biblical lens, and just actually what's actually happening in the world, not a theoretical, not what's actually happening." And I feel like that seems super obvious now that you've done the research and wrote the book, but like that's not how these other. I don't know that any other Christian resource, is really been completed that way that I know of. So that's amazing. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really do like from the more factual. No, this is what we've gained. We're not just making it up from one woman's perspective or mindset. This is what we've heard and seen. Yeah, and it makes a big difference.
So Sheila, you kind of inferred this with the nuclear bomb in the living room statement, but what did you discover as you went through the research from 20,000 women who completed the survey, and you began digging into the other Christian literature on sex and intimacy?
Yeah, we just found that our bestsellers in evangelicalism are littered with really toxic messages. Yeah. We ended up looking at 13 of the best-selling sex and marriage books, and we applied a 12-point healthy sexuality rubric that we developed to these books, that we were able to score them between 0 and 48 on how healthy they were. And Love and Respect literally scored 0 out of 48. It had nothing redeeming, nothing healthy at all about female sexuality. Every Man's Battle scored 9 out of 48. For Women Only, I think was 11 out of 48. Like we have so many books that are actually teaching messages that we now know do measurable harm. And when I say measurable harm, what I mean is it's been known for 50 years, for instance, that evangelical women have twice the rate of sexual pain as the general population, but no one's ever known why. And so we were able to identify what messages increase the chance that she's going to have vaginismus. We looked at orgasm rates. What messages decrease the chance that she's going to orgasm regularly? What messages decrease her libido? What messages decrease her marital satisfaction? And we were able to name those messages. And then we saw how frequently those messages were shared in our bestsellers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, so one question I have is, and I have kind of my own theory, but why is that? Why are some of these books, in case the people that are watching don't know this, like some of these books have sold millions of copies, right? So why, how are we in this scenario where these books are sending a message that is A, not actually in alignment with what Scripture says, and B, actually causing damage and strange thinking and situations in Christian marriages? Like, how did we get to this place, or do you know, or what are your thoughts?
That's a really long question that we've been trying to figure out. I think a lot of it, there's two things that I think are key. One is that most of these messages have been taught by men. So it's primarily men that are writing our books. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with men writing books, any more than there's anything wrong with women writing books. But when you've never really listened to a female perspective, and in a lot of our evangelical circles, female perspectives are really missing, then that can kind of get more and more extreme the more the messages are iterated, and female voices can really be left out. So we can see, for instance, how many books, well, for instance, here's a really good one. Sheet Music calls her period a difficult time for her husband.
Yeah.
Just think about that for a minute. Like Prudence.
Super hard on him.
If your husband said to you, your period's such a hard time for me, what would you do to him?
Oh,
you'd press this button first of all.
Yeah, like, that's such an outrageous thing to say. But these are the kinds of things that we get away with when we think about things almost entirely from a male perspective. So that's one thing. The other thing is the majority of our books were written by pastors. They were not written by people who are trained at all in sexuality, trained in research, trained in even counseling, and just because someone's a pastor does not mean that they understand how sex works for everybody. You might be an expert on your own experience, but that doesn't mean that you're an expert on this. Right. And so I think those are two reasons. There's many more as well. Yeah. But I mean,
it sounds like what you're saying is like the context from which almost all of these resources have been written from is not a well-rounded context. It's not, it's just very narrow kind of package. And I feel like, I don't know, like, so you said you looked at the top 15 or the top 20?
Yeah, we looked at 6 sex books and the top 10 marriage books, but 3 marriage books didn't talk about sex enough for us to consider them, so we excluded them. So it ended up being 13. Okay. Yeah.
And then out of those, what's the oldest one?
Active Marriage was originally published in 1976, I think, and Intended for Pleasure was, I think, early 80s. But those, we looked at both of them because they're iconic. Like they have sold steadily for almost 50 years now, 40 to 50 years. And Active Marriage was the one that wrecked my wedding night. So I just had to take another look at it.
Yeah. So Active Marriage. Did you read that one? I read that one. I read Intended for, and I also read Love and Respect and Sheet Music.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely read the top 2 there. I don't know about the other 2.
Interestingly, so I kind of enjoy Kevin Lehman's style, who wrote Sheet Music, because it's super funny. And so we kind of liked that book. But then after we read your book, we had bought a copy of that book that we were going to give a couple that was getting married. And then we threw it out.
Oh, I think we just sent it back.
We sent it back.
We sent it back.
We sent it back to Amazon.
Something of that nature.
You take this, Amazon.
Well, and that kind of leads into this other question is well, what do you do with all of these books that have some messaging in it that isn't quite right? Like, do you just not?
Do you throw the whole book out? Or?
Yeah, exactly. So what is your advice on that?
I think we just need to raise the bar on what counts as good advice. And we don't need to keep giving books that are a little bit harmful. I think there's this idea that people have, well, every book can be taken the wrong way. And, all books are harmful to some extent. Even people can even say the Bible is harmful. So we shouldn't be talking about how harmful books are. That's not true. That's not true. Because like I said, Love and Respect scored 0 out of 48. The Gift of Sex by the Penners scored 47 out of 48. Those are 2 very different books.
Right.
Boundaries in Marriage scored 42 out of 48. Boundaries in Marriage and Love and Respect have diametrically opposite messages.
Yep.
Boundaries in Marriage is telling people how to draw healthy boundaries. Love and Respect is telling women you can't have boundaries. So these are 2 diametrically opposed messages. And I think as a church, we simply must get a lot more discernment. Because no, it's not that every book can be harmful. I like to say this. Look, most marriage books have 2 elements. They have one element that every book has when it comes to marriage. They're going to tell you that you need to love more, that you need to be kind to each other, that you need to communicate, that you need to spend time together. All the advice that we generally hear that is good. Yeah. And then books have their own unique spin, right? Now, if you're a couple and you want to improve your marriage, right? You're reading this book because you want your marriage to be better. Chances are the book is going to help you. But is the reason that the book helped you because of the particular book you read? Or is it because you were already in the frame of mind to get helped? Yeah. And so if you're someone that read Love and Respect and you weren't harmed by it, that's fine. But you probably could have read any other book and it would have still helped your marriage. So let's not keep giving books that harm some people and say, well, it helped me. No, let's find a book that doesn't give messages that we now know cause harm. That shouldn't be too much to ask.
That's super good. Yeah, I with love and respect in particular, one of the things that we found we used to think was unique in our relationship is we go to like Weekend to Remember, read Love and Respect. We read a lot of these books or these resources, and then it would kind of be like a lot of the stuff that's for women applied to me. I talk more. I'm more feely than Prudence, and a lot of the stuff that's the men's stuff was like Prudence applied to her. So I'm just like, well, we're just really messed up. Like we're super weird, and and then you read this love and respect thing, and it's like, men need respect and women need love, and I'm like, no, I need respect and love. Like I definitely need love too. Yes, and also, Prudence was not sitting there saying, "Oh, I respect me more," but I was kind of like, "How could you approach your wife without respect?" Like it was kind of already mutually there. So when I read that book, I was actually offended by almost the whole book. And I think I finished it. But it was one of those books
it was really popular.
Million copies sold.
Like our culture at the time when it came out. So
I think they even did like small groups, everybody goes through it kind of thing. And I was just super frustrated with it. But I was kind of thinking it was like a lot of these things where I'm just kind of really unique and Prudence is really kind of unique. And so it doesn't really apply to us. But what was really nice about reading The Great Sex Rescue is you kind of gave me permission to actually find it reasonable that I wanted love and respect, and that I thought it was appropriate to give her love and respect, and that I didn't have a unique set of needs, that we both had unique needs that were kind of matched with who and how God made us. And it seems so obvious now, but it's strange that that's not, like that should be in every single Christian book, right?
Well, and that's part of the problem is that when you look at a lot of marriage books about sex or marriage or whatever, they really are geared towards men are like this. So men are visual, men lust, men watch porn, men need sex, men want sex. And women aren't visual. They just want to cuddle. They just want to talk. They don't really want sex. And that's the way we talk about it, that the genders are so different. And that is not a helpful way of talking about it. First of all, not all men have the higher sex drive. We found that in 58% of marriages, he has the higher sex drive. But in 19%, she does. And in 23%, it's shared. Right. So all this talk about he is like this and she is like this, it just doesn't apply to so many couples. Right. But also, there's just a better way to talk about it. Like, if you think about height, for instance, my great-grandmother was 5'11", and my great-grandfather was 5'6". But they didn't have scientists knocking at the door saying, how is that possible? Because we all know that just because men as a whole are taller than women as a whole, that doesn't mean that all men are taller than all women. And so we get that when it comes to height. But somehow when it comes to marriage, we're determined to make men one way and women the other. Yeah. And it's so much healthier to just say, hey, let's just think about principles. What is sex supposed to be like? How are we supposed to enjoy sex? Now, how can we make sure that we are each being giving to one another, but also we're each taking care to mention our own needs? Whichever way it goes, because it doesn't matter which way it goes. Those principles are the same. And that's just a much healthier way of talking about it.
Yeah. Wow. It's so good. That is so good and encouraging too.
Yeah. So I really liked how you designed the book to be read as a pair, like a couple, and that you have, those the check-ins and questions that you're supposed to ping pong back to each other. I think that's really good, because a lot of times we don't think about those things, or just the questions coming up with them ourselves is tough sometimes. It's uncomfortable if we're thinking about it, it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable to ask each other.
Yeah.
So anyway, we went through it together. And
I had already gone through it once though, so
probably 3 times.
Yeah.
that was really good.
So what I kind of felt as a whole is that a couple of things, that this was really a trumpet call to call men higher.
Mm-hmm.
That they have been set up to fail largely. When the world and the Christian community are all saying we don't trust men to stay faithful, to stay committed, to be leaders and someone worthy of praise, it's like, well, what are men going to do with that? They're going to grow into that.
They're going to live down.
They're going to live down into that. And that needs to stop, because I think overall there is a lot of distrust. And that's just been breeding over the years. I mean, it's definitely something that I have had to deal with. And
because of the messaging.
Yeah, just because of the messaging. So anyway, I think that that they need to be given the opportunity to be given that challenge to go higher and above, and us women need to be able to give them that opportunity to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I get so much criticism saying that I'm anti-man, which I find so funny, because I'm actually the opposite. I believe guys are good. I don't believe guys are destined to sin because of their male nature.
Wow.
Like Every Man's Battle, they said that when it comes to sexual sin, men get there naturally simply by being male.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
In Every Heart Restored, they say men just don't naturally have that Christian view of sex.
Right.
Like, how awful is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the message that we're giving our little boys, like 13, 14 years old, we're telling them, oh, you can't help but lust if a woman is dressed immodestly.
Right.
Right.
You're just your thoughts are going to get carried away. And so women need to dress modestly because you can't help it. And we're telling our teens, boys are going to push girls' sexual boundaries. So girls, you need to be the gatekeepers because he can't do it. No. He can't stop. He's incapable. And it's like, what are we saying about men?
Yeah.
Do we really honestly believe that women have more of the Holy Spirit than men do?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And I think, like, you guys both alluded to this, but like what I've seen in my life experience in any kind of leadership capacity, whenever you ahead of time believe someone is going to suck at something, the likelihood that they'll suck at it is greater, not lower.
Mm-hmm.
But when you believe in them that they will not suck, that they can succeed, that they can rise above, they might actually not. Okay. But the likelihood that they'll be able to go higher is far greater than if you've already pre-decided that they're going to suck. Like, it's just, that's just reality of it. And I feel like these books have created this expectation and this kind of just belief that, like, men can't, they're just kind of incompetent fools. And I think that this is pervasive throughout modern popular culture. Like, look at every sitcom. Like, every sitcom, the father in every sitcom is a babbling fool, like, in every single one. And so I think it's just a funny thing that has now become just people's reality. They just believe.
Right. Yeah, I know. And I'm just like, I am for men too. I want men to succeed. And it's just, it's been, it's been a journey walking through it, peeling off of beliefs that were patterned and shaped from being told this is this and this is this. And then, of course, you've got, like, the world just blasting us all with all of these images and how women should look and be.
Mm-hmm.
And And, you know, I'm always telling my kids, like when we go to the grocery store, I'm like, you see that magazine? Yeah. That's not a real thing. Don't try to pattern yourself after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know,
that idea, one of the bad messages that we measured was the idea that all men struggle with lust. It's every man's battle. Right? The idea that men are just naturally going to lust. And when women believe that, their libidos tank. Like women who grew up being taught that as teenagers end up having less of a libido once they get married.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this shapes your sexuality. When we tell this to teen girls, it shapes your sexuality. And it makes it harder to reach orgasm. It makes your marriage satisfaction go down, mostly because you have a harder time trusting your husband, even if he does nothing untrustworthy. Right. So this is not a healthy message. But even more than that, it's not even true. Yeah. It's not even true. We followed up our survey of 20,000 women with a survey of several thousand men. And we asked, do you have a daily struggle with lust? And then we asked, we gave them 5 different scenarios where they could lust in different options. And what we found is of the men who said that they lust, and again, only 75% did. So already it's not every man. Okay. So 75% did. But almost half of them did not lust in any situation that we gave them, and they don't watch pornography.
Right.
And so they show no signs of lusting. But I think that we have taught men that to notice that a woman is attractive means that you're already lusting. And so many guys feel so defeated because they feel like they have to go through life without ever noticing that someone has cleavage.
Right.
And it's like, that's not what lust is. Jesus said, whoever looks at a woman with lust. He doesn't say whoever sees a woman. He doesn't say whoever notices a woman. He says, if you look with a specific attitude, like to consume her as a sexual object.
That's right.
And I think we're setting up our boys to not be able to handle any of this.
Right.
Because we're teaching them that that looking and noticing is the same thing as lusting, and it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It reminds me of this study. This is a very kind of sharp corner. Reminds me of this study. You might know about this, Sheila. Like they did this study of rats and hope. And they put the rats in this water and they just see how long they could, swim before they gave up and just gave in and drowned. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was like 6 minutes or something. And then they started to give up. And then they pulled them out right before they actually drowned. Mm-hmm. And they let them rest for 1 minute, I believe, if I'm remembering it correctly. Not really long enough. Then they threw them back in to see how long they could go. So they didn't really rest. They weren't really, they were given hope. And then how long it was like another 20 hours or something that seems completely impossible. But it was because they were given that hope. Well, when you start off the equation with you're screwed, every man's battle, you've given no hope, right? So like the ability to swim goes from 20 hours down to that 6. Because you just don't even have any hope. Like you've been told you're defeated already. And I feel like that's the message that is actually the pervasive message in Christianity is, look, that's just how it is. You're pretty much screwed. And not only is that not biblical, but, in the research that you've done, you've found that that's not even helpful or accurate. Which is
exactly. And it really hurts women because when you tell women that a guy cannot help but objectify you, and if you look at the prescription for lust, for getting over lust that is in books like Every Man's Battle or Sheet Music, they'll tell you that he's supposed to take his sexual energy and transfer it to his wife. So she becomes the methadone. That's actually the word they use, the methadone for his sexual addictions and habits and compulsions. That is treating her like a sin management tool, not like a person.
Yeah.
The sheet music talks about how during your period, you should give him oral sex or a hand job because he's going to find it really hard to not watch porn during those 5 days.
Yeah. I mean, what are you really saying about both the man and the woman when you're saying that? Like, what's the real message? That's
because
horrible.
The thing is, if you want sex to be something that she wants, it needs to be something where he isn't using her.
Right.
And we have created a whole theology of sex in the evangelical church where basically she gets to be used as a sin management tool for him.
Right.
Sex has nothing to do with her. It's just about reducing his temptations.
Right.
And that's missing the entire point from Scripture.
Yeah. And then blaming her. What's really crazy is how often the woman is blamed when something goes sideways. Like it's like, yeah, that's just crazy. You had another question, didn't you?
Well, I forgot the book at home for anyone that must know. So I had like tabs in it that I was going to like read.
That's all right. That's all right.
Anyways, yes, we aren't like talking about a lot of the meat of the book, but there was a portion in it that where you talk about vulnerability with each other and how it's super important, which I'll be the first to admit I've not done very well in the past with this.
With vulnerability?
Yeah.
Right.
Because I think largely, I've walked through a good portion of my life feeling and thinking that things are a certain way, like what we're talking about. And so that's really closed me up to wanting to share those vulnerable parts with someone that I may not like fully trust or want to trust. So anyway, do you want to just take a second and talk about, do you know what I'm talking about in the book?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure exactly which part of the book, but I think I can go with this. So one of the really damaging messages, probably the most damaging message that we measured, was the idea that a wife is obligated to give her husband sex when he wants it. And this is widely taught. You hear it whenever pastors say, do not deprive him. He needs this. You need to meet his sexual needs. He needs sex just like you need conversation. And sex is reduced to a male entitlement and a female obligation.
Yep. Yeah.
The problem is that that's not what God intended for sex to be.
Right.
Genesis 4 verse 1 is a beautiful verse. It's an odd phrasing, but it says Adam knew his wife Eve and they conceived a son. And often when the Bible talks about sex, it uses that word to know. And the Hebrew root for that is the same one that David uses in the Psalms when he says, search me and know me, O God.
Right.
Sex is supposed to be this deep intimacy where we are able to be vulnerable, where we come to the bedroom with everything we are, where we feel completely known, completely seen, and that goes into our sex life. As soon as you turn sex into an obligation, though, then it's not about knowing the other person.
Right.
If it's an obligation, then my needs don't matter anymore. My perspective doesn't matter. The things I want don't matter because your needs take precedence. And so I actually am erased. So instead of sex being a knowing, it becomes an owing, and it erases me as a person. And this is what so many women have said they felt. And this was one of the main reasons, one of the main things that we found correlated so highly with sexual dysfunction and with vaginismus. Because if a woman believes the obligation sex message when she gets married, her chance of experiencing sexual pain increases to almost the same statistical significance as if she had been abused. Because our bodies interpret obligation as trauma.
Wow. So I mean, I don't even know if I believe what I'm about to say, but so that means that it in some ways it is abuse, right? Like to place this kind of non-biblical obligation kind of mentality on women is essentially abusive, or at least you could for sure say, according to the research, it has the same outcome as abuse, or very nearly the same outcome as abuse.
Right. Now, many women who are affected by the obligation sex message are not married to men who believe it. It's not like it's the husbands are necessarily preaching this at the women. It's that we grew up and we read the books. We read sheet music, which says that when you're postpartum, you need to give him a hand job. So when you are at your weakest, you're most exhausted, when you've got postpartum depression, you need to give him a hand job because he is the priority. Like
Yeah.
we grew up reading these books, you know, reading
Right.
Love and Respect. We went to the women's Bible studies that read Power of a Praying Wife, about how you need to give him sex no matter what every 48 to 72 hours. You know, we read this stuff and we internalized it, and it affects us even if our husbands don't feel that way.
Right. Or
And
maybe
that's that's the scary thing, is that it
or maybe,
isn't necessarily a marriage issue. It's a church issue that so many
Right.
women have been taught this stuff. And, you know, I know a lot of listeners are going to say, yeah, but you're not supposed to deprive each other. And I do want to address that if I can, just for a second.
Yeah, do it for sure. Yeah.
Because the question is, what are you not supposed to deprive each other of? Because that's the essential problem, is that we have the wrong definition of sex to begin with.
Right. Right.
Because when we think about what is sex, you know, we think about like you're putting together IKEA furniture, right? Like tab A goes into slot B, right? And that's how we think about it, as the mechanics. We think about it as intercourse. But the Bible talks about it as this deep knowing. It talks about it as something which is pleasurable for both, from Song of Songs. And it talks about it as something which is completely mutual in 1 Corinthians 7. So sex is something which is mutual, intimate, and pleasurable for both.
Right. Yeah.
One-sided intercourse is not sex. If she's sitting there making a grocery list in her head, if she's in physical pain, if she's in emotional turmoil, if she never reaches orgasm, that's not what's intended. Like saying that, like if she is never reaching orgasm, she is the one who's being deprived, not him.
Yeah.
like,
right.
like we need to look at this more carefully and figure out what we're really saying, because a marriage where she gives him sex every 72 hours, but she feels coerced and she doesn't feel any pleasure, that is not a marriage that pleases God. And she's actually being deprived there.
Right. And what's really crazy about this, as you're talking about this, what's coming to mind is there's this whole kind of mentality, hey, you know, men shouldn't be objectifying women. And that's kind of like what they talk about, like in, you know, Every Man's Battle, right? But actually, by talking about it this way, that's actually all you're doing is making it into an object. You're making the woman. So it's like, I mean, I don't even necessarily think they definitely, I think these authors, for the most part, don't have any idea that they're actually saying the opposite of what they intend to say, and it actually creates women into objects. What do you think about that, Prudence?
Yes, I think that that God loves beautiful things, and I think that He wants us to learn how to admire beautiful things without worshiping them, without idolizing them, without making them into something more than it shouldn't be.
That's right.
And that is something we need to maybe learn.
Yeah,
maybe we never learned that. But I think that also that that this book as a whole is also a call for both men and women to understand on much deeper levels the psychology behind what seems to be so innocent or common beliefs, and how it damages not just us, but not just women, but also men as well. Mm-hmm. And, you know, too many of us just kind of take everything that's in a generalized book and we just run with it because we just trust that the author just knows what he's talking about or whatever the case is. And we don't actually look at it and examine it for what it is. I mean, we also do this with the Bible, the scripture, a lot of times.
Right.
We just take somebody else's interpretation and that's it. That must be it.
Right.
And when perhaps maybe our entire life, we just didn't see it for what it's supposed to be.
Right.
Or actually is. So I think that that all of us, and we teach this all the time on our show, that we just need to take a look at our part individually.
Right.
And take ownership of the places that we need to heal in and ask each other questions.
Yeah, that's good.
Because a lot of times we're blinded to what we're doing largely. And we don't know because we don't talk to the other person that's involved with us. You know, am I doing anything that's hurting you? Or, you know, I have this new belief. What do you think about this?
Right.
I have a funny story about that. That's in the book. So we talked to one woman, and she said when she got married, she had heard about how men need sex every 72 hours because otherwise they'll be overly tempted or they'll get really physically uncomfortable. And the 72-hour rule is really common. It's in Every Man's Battle, Power of a Praying Wife, sheet music. We tried to find a source for it, and we ended up tracing it back to something that James Dobson said in the 1970s, but he didn't base it on anything. Like, there is nothing in the medical literature that says that men get especially uncomfortable at hour 72. But she'd heard this because we all hear this in women's conferences. And so she started initiating sex every 72 hours. And this went on for several years, and she was feeling really lonely because her husband never made a move on her. And so one day she was so frustrated, and she sat down and she just said, I just feel like you don't desire me. Like, why do you never start anything? And he said, I was just trying to keep up with you. You know? She's like, what are you talking about? And he just didn't have that high a sex drive. And so they decided that they would only ever initiate when one of them actually wanted it. And they've settled into about, you know, once a week or so now, but not every 72 hours. And they're perfectly happy, and they take turns initiating now, and everything's great. But she had assumed something about him, because this is what she had always been taught, that if he doesn't give it every 72 hours, he's going to have a harder time not lusting at work. You need to fill his cup up before he leaves the house, so that he has an easier time with all the billboards that he's going to see as he drives by. And she never knew he wasn't like that.
Right.
And here he was thinking that he wasn't enough of a man because he couldn't keep up with his wife. And it was just a hot mess. Right.
Well, and that's the other side of it too, is that, you know, the same messaging on the other side of the coin is damaging to men too. Like, you know, this guy is thinking that he's not, you know, as manly as he should be because he's not as, his sex drive isn't as high. Or, you know, I think what's far more damaging than that is just setting men, especially you know, we're giving this message to our teenage boys. Hey, you know, pretty much you can't avoid this in your life. You're a host. So here's a set of like tricks to like deal with the fact that you're basically going to have this problem. And you're just creating an opportunity for Satan to come in there and leverage a problem that might not have ever been there in the first place. And it's super, you know, we're literally creating this situation where we're setting people up to fail on both sides. And it's really crazy. And what's really crazy about that being crazy is that I don't think I've read every single book that you talked about in The Great Sex Rescue, but almost all of them. Like we've developed our own, you know, marriage workshops and various things. And we've been a student. We're very, very different from each other. So we've been working purposely on our marriage for 25 years. And what's interesting is the message we're talking about that's so damaging is fairly consistent in every resource we've gone through. Like different levels of it, different, you know, strengths of it, but it's a fairly consistent message. And it wasn't until we read your book that we had this kind of different look. But what was so powerful about it is you were kind of addressing what deep down inside we were feeling was a problem all along. Like it just, like I mentioned earlier, in all the workshops and books, I always align with a lot of the things that are supposed to be for women, and she aligns with a lot of the things that are supposed to be for men with regards to communication mostly. Like you can tell just from this show that I talk significantly more than Prudence does. But in all the books, like women are the ones that talk more. And just subtle things like that send this subconscious message that there's something wrong with me and there's something wrong with her. So we're always starting from this place when we go to work on a relationship. Well, I'm kind of screwed up and you're screwed up. And
I don't know. Like, I think it was, what was that one marriage event that we went to at Jansen Beach?
The Weekend to Remember.
The Weekend to Remember. Yeah. And I think we got done with that. And he's like, we're really messed up. I'm like, I like taking on all of these communication roles as the woman, and you're more like a man as they describe it.
This is what I was saying to her.
And I'm like, well, I don't know. I guess we're just going to have to hobble through.
It was really discouraging, actually,
Yeah.
and super not helpful. I mean, so I don't know. Sheila, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the problem is that they're misdiagnosing the problem. They're seeing everything through such a lens. Like if you look at any marriage book and you try to find out what is the big problem they're trying to solve when it comes to sex, well, let me ask you, talk to any marriage book, any marriage counselor, what is the big conflict that couples always have about sex? What do you think?
She doesn't want it. He wants it every minute.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so the issue that we have to solve is the fact that she doesn't want to have sex. And the solution in all of these books is to tell her that she has to.
Yeah,
because
do it.
she needs to understand
Just
what
do
he
it.
needs, etc. Now, I'm going to list 5 things. Okay. So get ready. I'm going to list 5 things that we found. If these 5 things are present, frequency totally takes care of itself. Her libido takes care of itself. Okay. If there's high marital satisfaction, if she feels emotionally close during sex, so she's not feeling used, she's not feeling pressured, she feels emotionally close. If there's no sexual pain, no sexual dysfunction, if there's no porn use, and if she frequently reaches orgasm, then frequency takes care of itself.
Right.
We have a 47-point orgasm gap in the evangelical church, okay? 95% of men almost always reach orgasm. Only 47% of women do. Or sorry, 48% of women do. So we have a 47-point gap. And yet these books are just telling women to have more sex.
Right.
What they should be doing is saying, hey, hold on a second. Let's figure out how her orgasm works. Let's make sure that there isn't porn. Because there is porn in 50% of marriages. Okay, like let's deal with these root issues because maybe the reason she doesn't want sex, well, maybe there's actually something going on there. Maybe your marriage is terrible. Like sex isn't going to fix that. And so let's not look at frequency as the problem. Let's see it as a symptom.
Yes.
That there's something else going on.
Man, that's so good. Man, that is so good. That's so good. What do you think about that, Prudence?
Man, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg here.
Okay, but here's something else I think is so funny. Okay, the church gives 2 messages about sex to married people. They say, God made it amazing. It's such an amazing gift. It's so wonderful. We should rejoice in it. Women, we know you don't want to do it. But you got to do more. If it's so wonderful, why doesn't she want to? Why doesn't anyone clue in that if God made it to be this amazing and women don't want it, that there must be something wrong with the way we're doing it. There must be something wrong with how we're talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. It is so spot on. So it's kind of like if we could just every time there would be this magical no button when this message was, talked about inside the youth group, every single time. But the problem is that this message is pervasive. So I guess, as we wrap this up, I'm going to put up a link. Let me just put this little banner. Boom. This is where you can find more about, this is the right place, right, Sheila?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So you can find more. Also, all of her books are on Amazon. Definitely recommend what Sheila has. And we'll put in the show notes, we'll put more links to the resources. But this is, we just kind of end this. What advice do you have to people? My advice is go read this book. But what advice, Sheila, do you have? Because I know a lot of people are going to hear this, and just like us, they're going to have felt something is off, but they're not sure what. And after all, Emerson is the expert and he sold 10 million copies of Love and Respect. So I guess I just need to get with the program. What is your advice to the people that have been taught their whole life, whole marriage or whatever, that this is kind of the way that it's supposed to be when it's actually not? What's your advice to them that if they're hearing this for the first time?
Jesus said that a good tree can't bear bad fruit and a bad tree can't bear good fruit.
Right.
And that we can recognize things by their fruit. And if you are reading something and you're feeling uncomfortable and you've been trying something and it's just not working,
right.
That is a sign you're allowed to use your discernment.
Right.
Church, we have to use our discernment.
Come on.
We each have the Holy Spirit. If you feel like there's just something wrong here, there's probably something wrong here.
Right.
And you're not being unchristian for thinking that. You're not being disloyal for thinking that. You're not being rebellious for thinking that. You're just allowing yourself to admit the truth of what your body's already telling you.
Yep, that's right.
And that's okay. Like, go on the journey of discovery and read The Great Sex Rescue. If you're still unsure, just go to Amazon and read the reviews, because you'll see what other people have said. And I think the most common word I've seen is validating and freeing.
Yes,
that it's just so validating and freeing.
That's a perfect word.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we just deserve to be heard. We just deserve to be heard, because there's been so much toxicity in this area. And I just pray that we can change the evangelical conversation about sex and marriage. That's our goal at Bare Marriage, is to change that conversation and make it something healthy.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. I appreciate you writing this book, doing all the research, spending some time with us today. It's absolutely fantastic. I can't believe people think you're negative on men. You're against men. Like, I feel like the other things are negative against men. Like, basically you're a dirtbag. You can't help yourself. So your wife needs to make up for your loserness. That's kind of the message of most of these. And you're basically saying, no, listen, people have their own issues and they need to own themselves. And I feel like it's not just refreshing, but validating. That is spot on. That's super good. So the book we've been talking about is called The Great Sex Rescue. You definitely need to go get it. We'll put the link. You can find it on Amazon. I know, there it is. It looks like that. It's absolutely fantastic. And for those of you that like audiobooks, it's in audio as well. So definitely go check it out. Sheila, thank you so much for spending time with us. This has been absolutely fantastic. Really appreciate the resource. Like I said, we actually give it away at our marriage events that we do, because it's that transformational. So thank you for writing it and doing it. And I guess we'll see you guys all in the next one.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. All right. See you later.